There you go. All right, good evening. The Design Review Board public meeting of March 13th, 2014 is called to order. Please refrain from talking amongst yourselves during the meeting, and please turn off or put on vibrate all cell phones and pagers. If you need to talk, please leave the meeting room. Anyone who wishes to speak, including applicants, is asked to completely fill out one of the speaker's cards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff. Anyone who wishes to be re-noticed about a project must completely fill out one of the postcards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff to receive notice of subsequent meetings. Current DRB agendas are available by by visiting our website at www.ci.glendale.ca.us. A handout describing the procedures of the meeting, possible board decisions, and DRB appeals is available at the table by the front door. Please note that appeals must be filed within 15 calendar days of the decision date. The chairperson may reorder agenda items at their discretion. Roll call. Board Member Mardian.
Here.
Board Member Malikian.
Here.
Board Member Palmer.
Here.
Board Member Sarkisian.
Here.
And Board Member Simonian. Not here. Report regarding the posting of the agenda. The agenda for this meeting was posted on the bulletin board outside City Hall at or before 5 p.m. on March 3rd, 2014. Oral communications. Do we have any speakers cards?
I have none.
Okay. Does anybody in the audience want to speak on an item not a part of this agenda? Nobody. Okay, we'll move on to the review calendar. Staff announcements. Jay, do you have any staff announcements? Okay.
Do you?
I do not. And then we'll move down to our agenda, the one agenda item we have for today. That is case number PDR 1328001 at 3060 Hollywell Place. And I will begin. Okay, the project before you tonight is a review of a proposal to construct a new, approximately 2,600 square foot, single-family residence with an attached two-car garage. The project is located at 3060 Hollywell Place in on a 48,500 square foot lot. The plans are behind you. A conditional use permit was granted last year to allow the construction of this residence on a vacant lot having an average current slope of 79%. The residence is proposed in the westernmost portion of the site and due to the topography has several different levels. The attached garage is at the lowest level, and then you go up about approximately another half level to the first floor, which includes the living room, dining room, and kitchen. Above the garage is a master bedroom, and then above the first floor is a family room, 2 bedrooms, and 2 bathrooms. The site plan of the residence has both similarities and differences with the surrounding developed neighborhood. The proposed split-level house is located in the front half of the lot, has a 15-foot and 10-foot street front and western interior setbacks. The front facade steps back with the slope of the site. Existing homes located in the north side, or on the north side of Hollywell Place, also are located in the front portions of the lot and have street front setbacks ranging from about 8 feet to about 30 feet. Interior setbacks of those existing houses are generally less than the minimum of 10 feet that we now require. That was not what we required when the houses were constructed. Garages in the neighborhood are attached and either front or side loaded. And as you can see, the proposed residence has an attached garage facing the street. The neighborhood contains both 1- and 2-story houses, many of which were constructed on manufactured pads. And this construction method is now discouraged by the city in hillside areas. The house is a split-level house, and while split-level houses are not particularly prevalent in the neighborhood. The proposed residence will be built into the natural slope of the lot to address the topography, which is consistent with the comprehensive design guidelines. Aside from the residence, the driveway, front yard, and rear yard, the remainder of the site is untouched. The lot coverage is approximately 4%, and approximately 92% of the site is landscaped. Nearby residences range in size from just under 1,900 square feet to just over 2,600 square feet, and the proposed residence is at the upper end of this range in terms of house size. While the house is comprised of 2 stories, it is 4 levels. This design reduces the appearance of mass and enables the house to both step back from the street as well as relate to the on-site topography. The design of the residence includes some large eave projections that add unnecessary bulk at certain locations, and staff is recommending reducing the height of or substituting them with narrower canopies or eliminating them altogether to just further reduce the bulk of the residence. The residence is contemporary with a flat roof, which is consistent with the style of the residence and will not increase the mass of the building. The proposed residence is faced with a composite siding and smooth stucco. Staff does recommend restudying the installation and placement of the siding to provide a better balance and delineate various masses of the house. The residence has an overall height of 31 feet and a floor area ratio of 0.05. Existing houses in the neighborhood were built in the 60s, 70s, and 80s and are ranch and various reinterpretations of traditional revival styles. The proposed residence is in a contemporary design and uses materials like I mentioned before, composite siding, smooth textured stucco. There will be aluminum framed windows and glass railings. These materials are common and appropriate for contemporary styled residences and suggest the project will be implemented in a quality manner. The stepped appearance of the retaining walls is somewhat at odds with the guidelines, and staff recommends that they be redesigned to better conform with the adjacent slope. That concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Questions for staff?
I had a question on the last condition. What are you thinking the approach should be on redesigning these retaining walls? Have any suggestions?
Our thought on that was, since they're proposed as block walls, that leads to the kind of stepping. They could either be poured-in-place concrete walls or perhaps block walls. I'm not sure how this works, but I think they can be cut at angles and then capped so that we don't have that continuous stepping.
Poured-in-place concrete?
Excuse me?
Can we use poured-in-place concrete?
For retaining wall, if it had a roughened surface texture, I believe you could, Roger.
Let me look.
We've been seeing a lot of retaining walls, not just current proposals, but past designs that start having so many different flat surfaces and kind of the short stepping aspect that it's really at odds with what we think of the goals of the hillside design guidelines to kind of let things blend into the sloping terrain a little better. So we'd be open to hearing from the board, obviously, if you had any ideas how to achieve that.
If we have no more questions, then I will open the hearing. We have several.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, did you have any?
No.
I have several cards here. I think I'll start with Mr. Hagobian. Give us your name and address for the record.
Good evening, chair members and chair lady. My name is Edward Hagobian. My address is 220 South Kenwood Street, Suite 210, Glendale 91205. I think it's well presented, the project, except that I have to mention about that canopies that they are higher. We are thinking that if they want to install some solar system, then that will cover and will not be visible from the street. That's one thing. Regarding the concrete blocks on the sides, it's a concrete block. Personally, I don't like to cut concrete block because you cannot cut it perfectly. And it is better to have like the way we have showed in stepping up These are on the sides, if you can see in the side elevations. Other than that, this house, the size is the fifth largest house in 300 feet, and we have no variance filed. All the setbacks are okay. As you can see, the floor area ratio is almost under 1%, 5.5%, and the lot coverage is the same. The average slope that is high, but where we build the house, that is not that high. I don't have the numbers with me. When we went to the process of the conditional use permit, at that time I had the map calculation showing that average slope of the footprint of the house. I don't remember the number, but I know that it's lower than the average slope of the entire lot. Other than that, I don't have much to say because it's well presented by the planners. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer.
I have a question. Have you thought of any means to mitigate the several oak trees that are within the patio area? Or
We are
those
not
being
touching
removed?
any. We are not touching any oak tree. They are way behind the. May I approach and
Sure.
show it to you?
Come on up.
As far as I remember, these are the oak trees here and here. That is, this is outside the property. This is outside. This is in the corner, and we are here, and we are not touching any.
Well, there are two right where the patio, there's one right here and there's one right here that aren't shown, so have those been proposed to be removed, or?
Yes, that I don't know why it's not shown in this plan, but I don't have even the size of it. That how big is this? I should be very small one.
Well, one's at least an 80. Do we have a tree report on this, or?
We don't have the tree report on that, but I believe Annie Schitz, he sent her recommendation that I think you should have it in the file.
Yeah, her notes to us said that no tree report would be required. None of the on-site oak trees would be impacted by the project. Now, with this conflicting information, I'll try to contact her again and and confirm.
And how tall are the walls on the sides up where the patio is?
We are showing in the side elevations. You can see it's about 7 foot, and these are walls, not retaining walls. A portion of it is retaining wall, but a portion is not.
Any other questions?
Got a question on your elevations. You call out the railings as wood and glass, but on the perspective, it's a little different.
Wood is the supporter. Yeah, it's the frame and the support. Other
Yeah.
than that, it's glass. The whole thing is glass.
But which one is it? Are you, because on that elevation shows wooden. See, this is the more. See here it says. Metal rail with top cap or glass mesh parapet. Okay.
So, Mr. O'Connor, one question. So these retaining walls here are negligent? I mean, they're not...
They are gradually coming down. They are gradually, it shows that it's coming down here. Here.
But if your natural grade is here,
This is at this point, it gradually comes down like that. That view is far.
Why is the wall 18 feet high here? This area, is that
Left.
this one right
Just
here?
this corner is because we have to have this 15-foot setback here. We put the landscaping in front of it to reduce the visibility of it.
But it shows it up higher on the elevation.
Yeah, but that thing is, that landscaping is what, we don't see that.
Okay, yeah.
questions? Okay, thank you. Next, I have Corazon Neves. You just state your name and address. You don't want to speak? Okay, that's fine. That's fine. I've got Annette Venenza.
Fianza, that's me. I'd like to speak after a few of the other speakers here.
Okay, Christopher.
Good evening. My name is Chris Fianza, and thank you for allowing me to speak. I'll come at this with a little bit different approach.
Just your name and address for the record.
3250 East Fairpoint Street, Pasadena.
Thank you.
I come at this, I'm a civil litigator, trying about 60 jury trials, and when I first heard about the development of this house, I thought it was insane. In 2005, you had CNN beaming trucks nationally from this exact hillside where the entire slope came down, such that it took 3 days and hundreds of truckloads to get out all the stuff. If this house had been there in 2005, when the CNN truck was there, it would have been in the middle of the cul-de-sac. Nothing has changed with regard to this slope. We have photographs, and they'll be submitted, but essentially you had a massive landslide. And if you recall, the historic water tables are very low at this point, but in 2005, what happened when we had record rains, it wasn't a single rain like we had this past weekend. It was a series of about, if you recall, about a month-long rain. It just saturated the hill above it, just like it's there today. And then even after the rain stopped, the entire hillside came down with thousands and thousands of yards of soil that would have gone right through the living room of this house. Now, you talked about block wall, retaining walls in the back. It wouldn't have stopped the mud. People would have been killed. And as a litigator, I recall, and everyone remembers in this room, La Conchita. In La Conchita, if you recall, they have the houses that overlook the ocean. And the county said to the people in La Conchita, you shouldn't live here. And they became squatters, such that the county didn't even take their property tax because they said the hillside will come down. And what happened? It came down and it killed several people. And it's just the same situation here, and that the hillside hasn't changed. No new vegetation has been put in. In fact, there was vegetation there prior to this massive landslide. But you just think if you had somebody coming in and saying, wait, you had a massive landslide that would have killed somebody in this house just 9 years ago, you'd expect this house to be there for 100 years, that I do not believe that the engineering as it's set forth is going to stop I assume everyone's been out there, but this huge slope to come down and to stop what will happen again. It's going to happen again, particularly with the lack of rain over the period of years. So I think that's something you should consider, that it might be great to have a new home and it's a beautiful house with all these windows, but the first thing that whoever lives there, when the landslide happens, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to sue the city. They're going to say, I was given the permit for this. Just a couple other things. None of the other houses have the balconies in the area like this. This house, it looks like it has 5 balconies, which is different than the other homes on the street. And just it looks like it's much larger. It says 2,600 feet, but if you look at it, just the way it's facing, that it seems quite larger. But I would just think before this board, I know everyone wants a new home, and it's great to get this, but to put this here where you've had a massive, massive landslide before without any changes to it, I think you're just begging for problems. So I thank you all for your time.
Thank you very much.
And I have the photographs, if you just bear with me, some of the destruction from that 2005 landslide. This backhoe was after 3 days of removing all the dirt and the hillside. It just came down like lava from a mountain. See all the trucks. These trucks and bulldozers were exactly in front of where this house is being proposed. And I think this is probably the best picture. The entire cul-de-sac was about 6 feet high of dirt, but the streams came down, and right through here it would have been wiped out, but right through the middle of the living room in the house is where these massive, to get CNN to come out to this little street and bring a satellite truck, it had to be a big deal. And it's the exact spot where they're proposing to build this house, and you can see how steep the hillside is. Same thing's going to happen. May not be for 5 years.
I have a question. So, to my understanding, you're explaining what the issues that the occupants are going to have by having this, not anyone else, right? Your argument or your discussion is
Well,
concern that you have for this development, not for the neighborhood or anyone else. It's more
nobody
of-
wants to have my father-in-law who will speak next, but nobody wants to have the house across the street from him wash into the road. But yeah, it's also, it wouldn't affect me because I live in Pasadena, but it would affect everyone here because they would say, and it always happens, I've represented municipalities, they'll say, well, you authorized it, therefore when somebody got killed, it's the city's fault. Obviously, there's governmental immunities, design immunities, I understand that, but that doesn't prevent the lawsuit. And you remember La Conchita, they paid several $1 million. Prior landslide case in Glendale, the city of Glendale paid out several $1 million. So it just seems so preventable because you're on notice now that this has happened. There's nothing they can say to say this didn't happen. It happened. It was very recent. And we're due for one of those, soaking rains, hopefully next few years, but you don't want to hope for this to happen again. But there's nothing I've seen from any of the engineering. I read through your entire report that somebody's going to warrant saying, I could tell the city planner that this will never happen again. And as designed, when you have a landslide that takes hundreds of trucks to get rid of, that this house as constructed and those cinder block retaining walls are going to stop Mother Nature, and the forces are tremendous. It was scary.
I guess your explanation is double-sided. They're on call too, so if they are willing to go ahead with it, so they are willing to know that they know that it's already there was a slide on the area.
But that's the logic of that is that my son wants to go drive his car at 14 years old, but somebody has to have the responsibility, and it's this board's responsibility. What if they sell it a month after they build it? Then the next person may not know of all these things. So just because somebody wants, the people in La Conchita wanted to be
Okay.
there, and then they sued. So
Thank you for making us aware. We've got
Thank
a lot
you
of
very much.
speakers. Annette? Oh,
Is it up to us to decide that? No, you should mention it.
Good evening. My name is Michael Saraguetta, and I reside at 3055 Hollywell Place. The construction proposed at 3060 Hollywell Place will be detrimental to the public's health and safety and general welfare. Construction of this project requires massive excavation of earth from an already unstable hillside that has collapsed in the past, resulting in a massive mudslide. This excavation requires cutting into a volatile hillside with an average slope of 79%, with a much steeper hill extending far above the proposed site. Furthermore, the negative environmental impact of this project is immeasurable. As a result of this project, 1,200 cubic yards of grading will occur, which is called minimal by the planner's report. This is not minimal. Dirt weighs over 2,000 pounds per cubic yard. This is the removal of over 2,400,000 pounds of earth. This will destabilize the hill and negatively affect the general welfare and safety of the public, not to mention the negative environmental impact this will have with the innumerable trips by truck haulers moving this dirt while traversing the narrow hillside roadway of St. Gregory and then out onto a winding Chevy Chase, surely creating hazardous driving conditions. The proposal prepared for this project states that this project is not a detriment to the public. Look at the photos that were just introduced and the enormous mudslide that occurred here. A reasonable approach indicates it is detrimental to excavate and build on an unsteady 79% hillside slope which has fallen before. This proposed so-called two-story residence will be 31 feet in height. This makes it equivalent to a 3-story tall residence, none of which exist on Hollywell Place. The proposed home is on 4 levels, quote, a split-level home, unquote, as documented in the proposal. There are no split 4-level homes on Hollywell Place. There are no homes cut into the hillside on Hollywell Place. In addition, the planner's report calls for a retaining wall to be built to, quote, enable a rear yard for the residents, unquote. The abnormal height and split-level design of the residence, along with the proposed 15-foot retaining wall built to the rear of the residence in order to accommodate a rear yard, do not conform to the hillside standards set forth by the city. In Chapter 3 of Glendale's Hillside Design Guidelines, quote, use of retaining walls to create backyards in hillside areas is not appropriate, unquote. This proposed home is non-compliant and does not conform with Glendale's Hillside Design Guidelines, and more pressing, it is unsafe due to the excessive slope and grading needed on an unpredictable hillside. I'm not here to prevent someone from building their dream home. I am here today to inform the city that the proposed construction on this unstable hillside is a danger to the nearby residents, including the owners of the proposed property and their family. And if this permit is granted, it will be a danger to the taxpayers, as the City of Glendale will be held liable when this precarious hillside fails again. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Excuse me, sir, you live across the street? Is that
Cross Street?
Yes.
To Hollywell Place, to St. Gregory, and St. Gregory leads out on Chevy Chase.
Okay.
I have Leo Surrogate. Now we're switching.
I'm sorry, is that okay?
Annette. Okay. Just state your name and address. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Annette Fanza. I live at 3250 East Fairpoint Street in Pasadena. I am the daughter of Leo and Connie Saragueta. I live at the home of where they came the night, in the middle of the night when the pouring rains came and the landslide came and fell. And they're knocking at the door in the middle of the night saying, we need somewhere to go because our house was just yellow tagged. This is a photo here, one side of it, of the mess that was created when the hill fell. Other side here has their home in the background. It went all the way up until their driveway in the middle of the night. They didn't know how far the mud had come. It will happen again. I'm a teacher in Pasadena. I teach 6th grade earth science. I show the kids my PowerPoint with all the pictures from that day of what happened, and I explain to them how it happens. And by them compromising the hill again, putting a huge home, 3-story, 4-story home on a 79% slope is a little bit shocking to me. And to the kids, I've been teaching this for about 6 years, showing them the pictures immediately after it happened. And they always said, what is it now? And I said, oh, it's nothing but beautiful natural hillside, and it's going to stay that way. And now somebody's coming in to build and compromise the hill. So I just want to say I'm hoping you don't approve something like this, because I don't want to have to get the phone call in the middle of the night that the land fell again, but this time my parents can't get to my house. Thank you.
Thank you. Leo, do you want to speak now?
Good evening. My name is Leo Saragueta, and I reside at 3055 Hollywell Place. I'm here to voice my concerns at the proposed construction of a large single-family residence at 3060 Hollywell Place due to safety concerns for my neighbors, the proposed occupants of the new home, and my family. These concerns are based on facts, not feelings. The fact is the proposed building site is unsafe and it's unstable. In February of 2005, a major mudslide on this hillside brought down massive amounts of debris consisting of trees, shrubs, rocks, and boulders. The City of Glendale responded with evacuation orders for 3 residences, including ours. We had to evacuate for 3 days and 3 nights. The city dispatched 12 trucks, including tractors and haulers, to clean up the debris. I'm sure that's someplace in the city that they can check this. It took 3 days of constant work to clean the street. All the major news stations were gathered on Hollywell Place to cover this story. I have photographs here today, which we've already showed you some, that depict the enormity of the situation, as well as the emergency vehicles that responded to the scene. Less than a month after this major slide, we had a second slide. This mudslide was minor in comparison to the previously described, but was substantial in its own right. Glendale responded with trucks to clean the debris. The same night as the Hollywell Place slide, there was a mudslide on Gladys Street, and the mud flowed down several homes to Glenmore Boulevard. I'm sure you people know about this. These homes are still unoccupied, and this is maybe 2 miles from our residence. As a result, the city of Glendale was sued and settled for $12 million, $12.1 million, and $3.1 million in attorney fees. These are all facts. Over the years, there have been projects that have been approved by the Design and Review Board and rejected by the City Council. Applicants have attempted to build a home overlooking Brand Boulevard and Kenneth Road. I believe it was approved by the city, by the Design and Review Board, but on 3 occasions, the City Council rejected the plans due to the 66-degree slope or percent, far exceeding the city hillside ordinance of 50%, as well as the evacuation of 1,500 plus cubic yards, thus making the hillside unstable. That proposal construction site at 3060 Hollywell Place has an average slope of almost 80 degrees or percent. I'm not sure what the technology. This is way too steep. Some of us still recall the residents at 3150 El Tovar Drive, and I know you say it's not relevant here, but it is. That home was permitted for 8,700 square feet and ended up being 13,000 square feet, which included numerous buildings violations. This home remained unoccupied for several years, waiting on a permit for occupancy.
Sir, your time is up. Everybody has a certain amount of time, unless you have something other than what we've discussed so far.
Yes, it's relevant, all this. Please let me continue
No,
here.
We have other speakers, and we have a certain amount of time for each speaker.
Can I just close this?
If you want to close it, go ahead.
I want to say that Mr. Hagobian has a project north of our street. Been on hold for 2 years. Someone on the board here failed to negotiate or talk to the fire department. I'm not really sure of why or what, but it's been on hold for 2 years. This unsightly place here that has toilets, chain link fence, signs, sheds, it's still there. It would be a nightmare for this to happen on our cul-de-sac, a nightmare. This home that we built here, that sketch doesn't look like this. This is the story poles. It doesn't look anything like that. It's going to be a monster house, 3 stories high. It doesn't fit in our neighborhood.
Okay.
The board needs to do the right thing. Please do the right thing. You cannot have this home go through.
Thank you very much. I have Philip Siegel here.
Good evening. My name is Philip Siegel. My wife and I live at 3061 Hollywell Place. We are new to the neighborhood. We've been here approximately a year. We were at a previous meeting in which the residence was presented to us, and there was a geological survey that was done of the specific footprint. But when we were inquiring about the surrounding area, the geologist said that he wasn't hired to discuss that. He was only hired to discuss the specific footprint. So we weren't given any detailed information about the impact of removing all of the dirt. So my concern was always very specific to what would happen to the surrounding geological area, in which there are several fractures that can be seen from helicopters. The only other thing I'd like to say is that we did have a significant rain in the last few weeks, and I was shocked to see how much earth moved on my own property, and several trees have moved, beautiful oak trees, because all of the erosion that has happened over the years. So my concerns are just technical ones. We would just like to be educated on some of those issues. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. I have Armin Hagobian.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the board. Been sitting there kind of contemplating. There are many issues have been brought up by neighbors, and we've presented the project. We do have an original CUP approval. Some of the same concerns were brought up. We did have our geologist, our soil engineer aboard, and a lot of the issues were clarified. We do have an approval on that. Would like to always speak about the specific projects, not bring up other projects, because there isn't really a relevancy between these things. This is a very specific site. Our geologist, soil engineer has, as a scientist, has given us an indication that it is stable to build here. It is rock. The loose soil that was concerned, yes, there are mudslides that have happened. Yes, there are pictures. But whatever those mudslides were, whatever those issues were on the surface, the actual landmass is rock, and there is a report on that. It is something that you can review. Beyond what the design criteria is as a design of aesthetics, there is a very specific code requirement, as you all may know. For structural engineering, for civil engineering, there's a very, very strict guideline we have to meet city-wise, state-wise. So that is going to go through its ringer once we, go through our construction documents. This kind of idea of huge house, mansion, large, overwhelming, overstated 2,600 square foot house. Brand new house, brand new construction, brand new technology, stricter guidelines. All the homes around this neighborhood are non-conforming existing conditions. If a landslide came through, depending on the soil condition of their homes, their house might come down as well. We don't know that. But their houses are built who knows when, based on what code, based on what kind of construction. So I think that we need to speak logically, we need to speak currently, 21st century, we need to understand what we are doing here and compare notes, apples to apples, not be emotional about it. I understand the concerns, and if there was nothing here, and if this land came down, it would come down all the way through and destroy the remainder of the house. Or, quite possibly, the homes on Hollywell who are on the downslope side may have bigger issues. They are on a downslope side. Their soil might come apart and that house may go down. This is not a mansion. This is not a huge house. It's 2,600 square feet. It is based on specific hillside guidelines. It has been reviewed by Roger. It has been reviewed by Jay. It has been reviewed by upper staff management. And it has been approved by them. They have seen it. They are okay with it. If there are aesthetic issues that need to be reviewed and touched upon or improved, by all means. But it does meet guidelines. It does meet architectural, civil, hopefully, we'll get the structural done in the future, and it will go through its specific plan check process. I had more, but we'll do the rebuttal. But thank you for your time.
I just want to state that I know the concern and the passion of the neighbors, but unfortunately this board does not cannot vote on something regarding structural or geological. If we choose to approve this house, it will go through the proper channels with the plan checking, but we can't address those issues for this board. I can't have any cross communication. Want a rebuttal? Okay, come on up.
Comments by the neighbors is a gross exaggeration of the facts. During the hearing of the CUP, we had a document that we gave a copy to the city. It shows in that document that only 3 cubic yards of dirt was hauled from that rain. That is a fact. That is a document that came from city, from the street department, I believe. That's one thing. The second thing is that we have a soil report done by a soil engineer. Armen forgot to say that dirt did not come from our property. It is coming from the city property on top. May I approach and show you the location?
Want the pointer?
The dirt is coming from the city property here through this and through these channels. This portion is solid rock, only a foot or foot and a half at most dirt on top, then the rest is solid granite. So everything is said, is mentioned in the soil report.
I'm sorry.
Again, comparing this for somewhere else in the Glendale or something that happens somewhere, it is not logic to mention here. As a matter of fact, across the street houses are mostly built in fabricated, made flat lands, fields. So if something happens, I hope will not happen. That has nothing to do with this house. The channel next to us, if any rain or any debris comes, will go through, has nothing to do with this house. Any questions?
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to close the public session. If anybody wants to start with this, Mr. Mardian?
Yeah, I'll start. I have no issue. I'm glad, Madam Chair, you mentioned that our preview is to look at design compatibility, context in the neighborhood, and how it relates to the surrounding neighborhoods. The drainage issues and grading issues, I'm assuming that staff in the conditional use permit has put a condition that it has to go through a grading permit process.
That's correct.
That's correct. So those issues, I rely on the city's review and the applicant's engineer to provide documents that will meet code requirements. I did look at the neighborhood average, and this house isn't, based on the numbers that I saw, is not large. There's 8 homes are over 2,500 or 2,400 square feet. So somebody say this house is large. I don't really agree with that. I have some concerns about the retaining wall heights in the back. As far as design is concerned, I like the approach where the applicant is going with this, but I feel the building is top-heavy. It should be kind of simplified a little more and maybe create what staff is, I think, recommending is creating the canopies. Still keep the height, but in order also to reduce the height, I think you have about a couple of feet to work with on the height. That could be dropped. I have a feeling you can make that work. But overall, I appreciate the design, and I think the material and choices are used are within the range of the hillside guidelines. And I do feel if you create these canopies, it will reduce the mass tremendously. And the placement of the wood siding, I do agree with staff that should be looked at. But one thing I'm going to go back to the retaining walls. Is there any way that these retaining walls could be reduced in height as far as visibility? Is there any other, can we step those walls, or is that?
And which ones
about the rear walls.
specifically?
The rear walls, right, the rear walls.
Because the walls on the sides are largely fences on top of retaining walls. The tall retaining wall is really the wall across the back of the property, which meets code. We're allowed to have a 15-foot high retaining wall as long as it's behind the mass of the building. And the theory behind that is that that part of the wall really isn't that visible, although from oblique angles part of it might be.
I just maybe, because I don't know what the freeboard will require on the soil report, but usually it's about 2 feet. And I do agree with staff somehow, the breaks maybe should look at on the step on the walls. But overall, I'm in support of the project. And this is an improved street, although there is landslides and issues that has occurred over time. But in my belief, with all the drainage and the grading that the walls will take place, we'll take the water away from the building and drain it to the street. And I think that will be reviewed very sensitively at the grading department. With that, I'll like to hear what my other colleagues have to say.
Mr. Sarkisian?
I agree with Mr. Mardian. It's not in our purview to comment on the grading stuff. As far as the design, I like the modern look. I wish the colors were a little lighter. Maybe I think that brown piece over there comes off as black almost, just to blend in a little bit more with the surrounding. I don't mind the eaves. And I think the 15-foot wall in the back is kind of hidden when you're standing on the street. I don't think you're going to see those. So, that's all.
Mr. Malikian?
Thank you. I want to talk a little bit about, and I think public deserves to hear a little bit about the soils issue, even though that it was explained. I'm not a soils engineer, nor I'm a geologist. But I've done enough projects on hillsides that I know a little bit about what the normal process is going to be as you go through the development of this project. Us sitting here, we cannot deny the project or reject the project based on the history that has happened 7-8 years ago. We are here only to review the design of the project itself. During the process of the conditional use permit, a lot of these conditions as far as SOL's conditions, and also departments such as Public Works and Engineering did have the chance and review the process. Now, once we approve this, or if we approve it, or if we send it back for redesign, it will be purely for the design of the project and how aesthetically this project is going to look. Based on my experience, I know after this is done, if this gets done, and this is a big if, we don't know, we haven't made any decisions yet, the foundation work is going to be substantially stronger, as one of the applicants explained. The foundation work will be embedded into the bedrock itself. So anything that you've experienced are the loose and slop off of the dirt that has been slid down the hill and it brought down. So essentially, if you take a large hose and hose it down from top of the hill, and once this project is sitting on these piles that are embedded into the bedrock, essentially the dirt will get washed off and the building will stand there, should stand there. So during the process of the designing, the engineering, and all of that, these are all going to be addressed. If at some point this is seen that it's going to be a substantial problem, it will get stopped. A lot of people are going to review this, a lot of professionals, engineers, that they do this day in and day out, and they're going to address these conditions. So just to assure you, it's not over if it goes through this process. It still need to go through the engineering and different sources of process. Now, as far as the design itself, it is a minimal, clean, minimal, modern style, I would call it. I agree with staff, and I think it is top-heavy, but I do want to address some of these retaining wall issues that are, even though they're not going to be seen from the street based on the elevation, you can't see it, but theoretically you're not going to be seen. It's not going to be seen. The problem is that as you drive up, you will see the size of them. It has, if you look at the side elevation, east elevation, you kind of see the profile of the hill and how the steepness of the hill. My suggestion is, and I don't know if the direction what we're going with, and I don't know if the architect has even entertained the thought of essentially shifting, because looking at the back side, the backyard of, theoretically the backyard of this structure, pretty much unusable. I mean, there's no windows, there's no activities, it's just a 15, 17-foot retaining wall against a building structure that is basically set level with the retaining wall down below it. And it's creating this enclosed section there. My thought, or just a study option, and I don't know if this was even entertained, was to create an impact wall along the back retaining wall and literally shift that entire second floor towards the back and create the rooftop as a green roof or some sort of a rooftop that it becomes a more of an impact wall, you can call it, and essentially shifting the back to the front and setting the entire thing to the back. So that would have been if this came in front of us as a preliminary design, that would have been an approach that I would have 100% suggested for them to entertain and try. But right now, the way it is that I think some of these lines that are coming together, I think they need to make a little bit more sense. Some of these lines that are coming in, dying into here, and then this is something else, and that's something else, and so I think just cleaning this whole thing up, and then possibly, we have this clean line above, but then the roof forms that are kind of, movement of these forms, but yet you still have the flat roofs, or maybe that simplifying these and just making these much thinner, much simpler roof. And I'm not sure exactly what it's going to do if we actually move this section, even pushing a portion of this back. And creating a deck here, maybe creating activities coming off to this front deck. And there was a comment made that there's no balconies, but obviously all the balconies that are on the existing is facing the view side rather than the street side, and this is facing the view side. So obviously none of the buildings that are sitting on the opposite side of the street have a view facing the hill. They're facing down on the opposite end. So this would be a logical location to put against the view. So so that's where I am right now with this. So I would just wait until. Oh, and one more thing. Suggestion about the street. I appreciate the comment about, not cutting the block. What we can do is we can set the block lower than the site grade and then form the top piece for it as a concrete. So you have a much thinner, narrower line. So these are set lower and then just form this, and then we create a simple, clean concrete look that comes down. So you get rid of that stepping. But that's just one solution.
And we will look into whether we can have the exposed concrete or if it would need to be textured, stamped, or formed in some way. So.
I agree with my colleagues' comments, and I agree with the staff's comments. I just want to bring up I think there is some problems with the oak trees, and that I would just suggest that they be looked at again and addressed, because there are two that encroach right into that rear area. And that looking at the landscape plan, I think there's some errors, because I don't see that you're going to be hauling 36-inch box trees up the slope. I think they've just been switched around. And somewhat, so to do some mitigation on that 15-foot retaining wall, the plant material that's proposed is not something that's going to hang over the top. So you might want to revise that and get something to soften that look a little bit. But the other comments, I think, are all valid, and that's all I have to say. Any other questions?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I want to follow up what Mr. Malikian was talking about, the distance between the building and the retaining wall. We've done these before. Impact wall works. But I think in this particular case, because of fire hazard and things like that, this works better for the separation. I live in the hillside myself, different conditions. When we there's homes that are also sunken into the hill. That to me is a fire hazard, although that's nothing to do with our discussion here, but I just wanted to bring that up. You can reduce the height, maybe bring that wall closer by doing an impact wall, but at least he has some access from the back of that hallway to go to the back and use it. I wish he would have been able to use it from the other rooms, but he still has a possibility to do that, because the difference is only a foot or so. He's only got a couple of steps. So he could flatten that out and have some access. But I'll leave it up to him, but I just wanted to mention that I think separating the building from the hill with a retaining wall, in my opinion, is less hazardous. But with that. But as far as I mentioned the two top-heavy, are we going to let staff, if we decide to approve this, staff work that out?
Would be comfortable with that.
And the other condition that I want to add, I want to make sure the railing on the perspective is the one that going to be used.
Which is the glass railing versus...
Glass railing, yeah, with those studs, metal studs. And
What is the maximum height for freestanding walls? Is it not 6 feet?
Fences?
Property line walls? We don't have a maximum height for fences.
I'm just looking at these side walls. I thought there was a 6-foot maximum.
No.
No.
Said like it's 5.
We've had people build spike fences much higher than that, so...
Okay.
Yeah, there aren't any maximum height for just a standard fence. After it gets 7-8 feet, we question more people.
Okay. Any other questions?
No, I'm fine.
Can we read back whatever comments we have? Additions?
Do you want to make this a cooperative effort?
Sure.
All right. So I'll read the staff conditions first because it sounds like you want to keep those. The first one is reduce the length of or eliminate the extended eaves or substitute them with narrower canopies to reduce the bulk of the building. Okay. The location of the proposed siding shall be restudied to provide better balance and delineate various masses of the house, particularly at the west side. And then finally, redesign retaining walls with step profiles to have sloping upper surfaces that better conform with the adjacent slopes. So we're fine with the wording of that.
Which we could incorporate Board Member Malikian's thoughts about the
some sketches.
with the block below grade and.
And then let me pull out some of your comments. There was a comment to consider reducing the height of the rear retaining wall.
As long as it's code compliant.
Okay.
As long as it's code compliant.
And we left open, we heard kind of the idea of the impact wall pushing the second or the upper floor back versus Board Member Mardian thinking the proposal was okay. So we've heard two different opinions.
I just feel that that location it was utilized and used somehow, even possibly creating some sort of a deck or some, I don't know, anything. Just have some activity rather than solid wall on all four sides and just creating a...
And there is the one door leading to it, so it could be a pet run.
That's what it'll be.
There was a comment about using lighter colors.
That was Mr. Sarkisian.
Consider lighter colors.
Just for the dark, the brown.
Okay.
Your agreement on that?
We're okay with the
I'm okay
colors.
with this color. I think dark will blend in with the hillside. With all due respect,
white
Mr.
might
Sarkisian.
Pop it out.
So no.
Democracy in action.
Oops, sorry. We talked about the impact wall and a green roof. There was a simplifying the roof forms.
That kind of comes back to, I believe, the concept of canopies, narrower roof lines,
Okay.
kind of all around the house, the sides and the front.
Okay. And then I have relook at the location of the oak trees and modify plans if necessary.
Yes.
Is that
Just need to address it.
okay? And then provide another plant for the area adjacent to the retaining walls that will
Create
spill
something
over.
that hangs over.
So a trailing.
Trailing plant. Okay. And did we miss anything?
We had the bucks, the correct
Let's restudy
plans.
the trees. I think a few things are mislabeled.
Yeah.
And the question there is just the large box trees are unlikely to be brought up the hill, so we
And
just
there are
want to make
different
sure.
kinds of trees, so I just think he mismatched,
Okay.
just to look at it.
Anything else?
Sorry.
Anything else?
Wife.
Any motion?
Yeah, that was everything I had.
I'll make a motion to approve the project with the conditions.
I'll second.
Okay, a motion was made to, a motion, a second was moved to approve the project. This will be a roll call. Mr. Mardian,
Yes.
Mr. Sarkisian, Mr. Malikian.
Yes.
And Ms. Palmer.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0. Thank you.
We have some minutes to look at.
I need
I know.
move over here again.
Oh,
This is yours.
We do have approval of February 13th minutes. Did you all have any comments on those, or?
I can't vote on those.
I'll make a
Okay.
motion to approve the minutes of the February 13th, did you say?
Okay, hold on one second. I'm getting feedback.
Is it open when they
Okay, we had a motion to approve the minutes. Was there a second? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. All right, a motion was made to approve the February 13th, 2014 minutes. Mr. Mardian? Yes. Mr. Sarkisian?
Yes.
Mr. Malikian and Ms. Palmer?
I still sign this?
I'm sorry?
Still sign this even though
I think we probably need someone else to sign
That's
it.
what I thought. Well, we can, one of us.
Here was Art,
Yeah.
Art, I think.
And other than that, staff has nothing else.
Make a,
To adjourn?
yes,
All right, we're adjourned. Thank you.
thank you.